All right, I'm looking forward to seeing your pitches in regard to whether or not the plaintiff in the Depp Heard case has actually been damaged in any measurable way. Um, so one of the other issues, and one of the reasons I thought that this case actually is interesting, I'm personally not a fan of either actor, so I can't speak to kind of their celebrity status. But any defamation case does have implications of free speech, which I'm very interested in. And so, in particular, one of the things I'd like you guys to think about is something that courts often do when they make determinations on what sort of outcome a case ought to have is often they will determine for themselves, well, what do we think will happen? What incentive for parties going forward result from either one side or the other being granted a victory in a particular case? So in this case, two possibilities. One possibility is that Depp wins his lawsuit. So his lawsuit is for a defamation suit. He gains some sort of recovery from Heard, even if it's a nominal recovery, even if the judge says, well, I think you were damaged, but not to any great extent. I'll give you $1 in damages, but I will nonetheless grant you a victory in the Depp v. Heard defamation suit. Thinking about the parties that could be affected going forward. So first, how would that impact? How would that impact, I guess, Amber Heard's behavior? Hard thing to predict an individual's behavior. So you can certainly address that. But I think more interesting for me is how do the Washington Posts in the future, or individuals who are, for whatever reason, are either public figures or are private individuals who have access to a public forum, how likely would they be to write and publish something along the lines of Heard's op-ed piece? So if you think Heard's op-ed piece had any sort of public benefit, or was based on an issue of public interest, and I think you can make a pretty strong argument that domestic abuse is an issue of public interest, of lasting public interest, would a Depp victory here have an impact on individuals in the future who think they might want to write an op-ed piece very similar, either because they're celebrities and therefore they have sort of a public platform, or maybe they're private individuals but will nonetheless like to engage in a public platform based on personal experience? Would a Depp victory lead to chilling that kind of speech, or lead to people less likely to want to write an op-ed like that, or less likely for the Washington Post of the future to publish an op-ed like that? Now, the Washington Post isn't being sued. We talked about the standards that courts use in particular to defend companies, media companies, in regard to free speech rights, and that the actual malice is a pretty difficult thing to show. And they have to, in the case of a newspaper, they have to show that they were careless of the facts in some fashion, or careless as to its truth or falsity. So while Washington Post may not be a party to the suit, if Depp wins the suit against Heard, a suit against the Washington Post would almost certainly follow. So then the question is, what would the outcome of that sort of lawsuit be in the future? Now, I think his case, to the extent that it has any strength at all against Heard, is much less likely to prevail against the Washington Post, unless the Washington Post really did no due diligence at all in regard to the truth or falsity of the op-ed, particularly given some of the court documents that were around at that time that were available for public scrutiny. So that's the first thing I want you to think about. And then the follow-up, kind of the alternative, what if he loses his case? Does that have a negative impact in some fashion? Now, it doesn't necessarily impact free speech as such, but do you think that it expands the notions of free speech past the point where it ought to be, from your perspective? I think it's a tougher case to make, and I don't know how many people would make it, but I'd like to get your take, really, for you to think about and do a little bit of research, and talk with Mr. Katch, who has a lot of experience in terms of media, what you think the outcome would be. What would the parties of the future do in reaction to either Heard or Depp winning the case? And I'd be interested to see what you guys come up with. If you can put together presentations, that'd be fantastic. There's a study.com quiz that's been shared with you. If you guys could polish that off, just having to do with what we already talked about earlier. Okay. So that's what I'd like you guys to do in the afternoon. If you don't have anything else that you're doing, or if you're not still working on your presentations for the morning. And I will see you soon, either this coming Friday or next week. So hang in there. I hope things are otherwise going well for you, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.